Great. Well, thank you all for coming. And this is just so exciting for me and a huge honor to be here with these smart, successful ladies. And I'm going to introduce them quickly so we get to hear them talk. We've got Lori, Tracy, Dana, and Corky. Thank you. And they are the authors of the multiple award-winning The Pollan Family Table. If you haven't seen it, that was their first book. And their awards include the Gourmand International Cookbook Award 2015, Best in the World, Best First Cookbook, Book Page Best Cookbook of 2015, Goodreads Choice Award nominee for food and cookbooks. And each of them is a recipient of the Global Green 2015 Sustainability and Food Award, which is pretty darn cool. And their recipes have appeared in O, the Oprah magazine, Elle, People, Vogue, Better Homes and Gardens, Coastal Living. They've been on TV, and they've been doing a whole lot of publicity for their new book, their second act, which is called Mostly Plants, 101 Flexitarian Recipes from the Pollan Family. It was published in April by Harper Wave, and it's already widely acclaimed. And it really, in my opinion, hits a real sweet spot for the Pollans, who not only value cooking and eating together as a family, but having meals that are based on whole foods, that are vegetable-centric, that take some planning, but that make everybody in the family happy when they sit down to the table. And last but not least, these guys are also, in addition to being cookbook authors, mothers and grandmothers and writers and actors and businesswomen and fitness experts. So they have a lot to share with you today. So to get you started thinking about mostly plants, I'm just going to read a quick little list of some recipes. Crispy Parmesan roasted chickpeas, bulgogi beef salad, crispy kimchi and scallion pancakes, savory tuna burgers with sriracha mayonnaise, or a ketty with shaved Brussels sprouts and creamy parsley pesto, shrimp scampi with zucchini noodles, tandoori chicken and vegetable sheet pan supper, and West Tisbury carrot cake, my favorite. So the first thing I want to, after doing one book, I want to find out from these guys, how did the idea for a new book come along? And if you guys don't know, the title of the book, Mostly Plants, is taken from their brother Michael's famous short sentence, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I want to know, did the title come first or the idea for a flexitarian book?
The idea came first before the title, but then we knew the title. So
here, let's do this.
Oh, okay. So actually the idea came before we found the title for this book. The more we found out about flexitarianism, the more we realized that's the way we have been eating all along. Some meat, mostly plants, and we wanted to introduce that idea to other people because it's an open way of eating.
That's very cool. So how did your method for collaboration happen?
So how it happened, there's four of us. We all thankfully live in New York City, so it made things very easy. What we would do is come together and brainstorm and just think of all the things we want to make, things our own families have been cooking, ingredients that we were really interested in. And what was so nice is because two of us are vegetarians and two of us are flexitarians, we had so many ideas. So we would brainstorm ideas and then we would break up into groups. So either it would be two of us or three of us that would come together and cook a recipe, and then two more of us would cook the same recipe. We tested them like crazy. And then after that, we had a recipe tester test everything.
Cool.
Because the worst thing is when you follow a recipe and it doesn't work.
So how did you find your recipe testers?
How did we find this one? Oh, she was great. Yeah, she was recommended highly. And she was actually on one of the very popular food blogs. And she was a pleasure to work with. So we were very lucky with her.
So once she tested, they came back to you, and did you test them again?
And then we would make a few changes if she had them, and then we would test them again and run the changes by her, too. Because it's very different sort of writing a recipe and then cooking from the written recipe. So we wanted to make sure we got everything right.
Well, it shows in the book, that's for sure.
Oh, thanks.
And I want to ask, this book, their first book was really beautiful, but this book is exceptionally beautiful. It's very beautifully designed and has lovely photographs. And wanted to find out from you guys how involved you were in that process and whether you had opinions on what things looked like, and did you participate in the photo shoots at all, or?
So it's interesting. I mean, from my perspective, actually, it's very interesting because I'm an actor. And so when I am in that world, you have absolutely no say about anything, really, except what you're doing up
Interesting.
there. So you don't get asked your opinion about anything. And in this, they would say to us, what do you guys think should be on the cover? And we were like, what do we think should be on the cover? And what do you want to shoot? So we really produced the entire photo shoot, which was very exhausting and time consuming and stressful, and
It is.
choosing which recipes were going to appear, deciding what would be the prettiest. And, we did a lot of that work with Nicole Franzen, who shot the book, and she's amazingly talented. But we really produced, it was like producing a small movie.
It is.
Yeah.
Photo shoots are a huge amount of work, and they're expensive and
as
time
we
consuming.
found out.
And but they make such a difference. The photos in here are really beautiful.
Thank
Did you get
you.
involved in the propping at all, or?
We had a wonderful prop stylist.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
And but they would say, "What do you think of this plate?" And that's really fun. It's sort of fun choosing the plates
Yeah.
and choosing the spoon. And
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
cool. So the other thing that the book is, in addition to being beautiful, is it's hugely practical. It's very accessible. You guys, your voice is just so welcoming. It's like being in the kitchen with them. And the first 30 pages of the book are all tips and favorite equipment. I love the time-tested tips. And there's a code for vegan and vegetarian and dairy-free and gluten on every recipe. And how did you guys make that a priority? What was that? Where did that come from?
We really wanted to create a cookbook that anybody could use, because we all know people who say they don't cook because they don't know how to. And we don't think you don't know how to cook. You maybe haven't practiced cooking. We all have children who now love to cook, and we're like, let's write recipes that anyone can understand and there won't be any mix-ups. And so we also wanted to convey our mostly plants message. So we talked about how to buy poultry and how to buy meat and fish and vegetables, how if you're having a little problem with a recipe not coming out well, how you can modify spices. And one of the parts of the book that is I guess it's our hate-love relationship that we have, is every recipe has a market and pantry list. So you could just
Very
take
cool.
a picture of the page which has
I love
this,
that tip.
and you know exactly what to buy at the food store. And we had done it in our first book, and it was so time-consuming, because if you're saying, half a cup of chopped nuts, then how many walnuts do they need to buy? And it was just so much work. And we were doing the second book. We're like, we have to do this again. And we're like, but it's our favorite thing in the recipes. So we did it again.
It really makes it's incredibly useful. So let's talk about some of those tips. Things like don't wash your poultry. Now that's something I'm always telling people, and people don't know these
No,
things.
It's true. I think it's
And
a
there's a whole,
change.
you have a long list of tips.
Yes, but this is one change that the poultry industry, I think, has come up with, that if you wash your poultry, whatever is there is just throughout the bird, and so that you just want to dry it and not wash it.
Otherwise, you're spreading bacteria all over the place.
Yes.
Yum. And Corky, what were some of your favorite tips?
Well, one that I love, and it's such a classic, is Mise en Place, where you actually put everything out together and also measured before you start cooking. So it just makes cooking so much easier when your onions are chopped and your carrots are cut and all of that. And it's right in front of you. And that way you don't miss an ingredient as far as adding it when it should go in.
Yes, like I did yesterday when I did sour cream for a coffee cake. Yeah, you can mix lemon juice and heavy cream, I now know. So, but yeah, it's a huge thing.
It's
So,
easy to do.
Dana, do you have a
that.
favorite tip?
This is one that I use all the time, and I don't know if it's a common tip or just somewhat new to me, but I love avocados, and my kids are obsessed with avocados, but often it's very hard to get them ripe, or you have to buy them days in advance to plan when you're going to make your guacamole or whatever you're going to do. So if you put an avocado in a brown, if you want to ripen it, you put it in a brown bag, and then add a piece of fruit like a banana, close up the bag, and it will ripen it very quickly. So that's
to
probably one of my
remember that.
favorite tips right now.
I love it. Tracy, do you have a favorite tip?
Well, it just seems like such a sort of common sense thing, but I find myself still forgetting to do this, and I know a lot of people don't, but I find if you read the recipe all the way through, from the start to the end, then there are no
Everybody's nodding.
surprises,
Yes.
right? Every time I get a new recipe and I'm like, oh, I just know what's going to happen, and then you're like, oh no, this has to be in the refrigerator for 3 hours,
Exactly.
and the
That's what I was
company's coming in one. So that's, for me,
We
that's
all
one that
do that.
yeah.
Yeah. Lori, do you have a tip?
I think I would reiterate. I mean, we have a lot of tips that you can get the cookbook and look at, but the mise en place that Corky talked about, for me, when you have everything chopped or diced or measured, cooking is a breeze. And if you have a spouse or children, they can do it. And my kids say to me, "What do you want me to do?" Like, okay, mince the shallot. And so I think it just makes cooking so much easier. So that's my favorite tip in the book.
It is. So here's one for you, all you guys. I just want to back up a minute and define flexitarian. I want to make sure that it's a big word, and people think of it as meaning many different things, and there's sort of different ways to approach it. How do each of you in your home cooking approach being a flexitarian?
Oh, for me, what I love about it is that you don't have to give up anything if you're a flexitarian. If you like bacon, you can continue to eat it. If you like, other kinds of meats, you just change the arrangement of your plate. So the meat becomes like a spice, a flavor, and then you surround it with vegetables. And it's so satisfying and so delicious. And in the book, we have all these recipes that show you how to put all of this together.
Delicious
And
things.
the other thing you can do is so you can change the ratio on your plate, or you can just decide, okay, I'm going to go meatless, say, 2 days a week. And then after that, you have a hamburger one night, you have chicken the next night, and then after that, you go, 2 to 3 days with just all vegetarian. So you kind of have
That's
to do,
cool.
I think, what's right for you and your family. In my family, there's 2 flexitarians and 2 vegetarians. So we're kind of always going back and forth a little bit.
Cool. Any thoughts, Tracy, on flexitarian tips? Now, you were a vegetarian until you had your twins.
I was, yeah.
And Lori and Dana are vegetarians. So I also wanted to ask you guys your tips for cooking for omnivores, and because the book is really good for that.
Right. I mean, is this still working? Can you guys hear me? I was vegetarian for 30 years, I think, from when I was very little, and all through my first pregnancy. And then I was pregnant with twins, and something happened, and all of a sudden I was eating like an Italian meat hoagie, like one day. It was a weird thing to change on,
Yeah.
but I was just like craving it.
Gracious.
And I think that's what's a little bit intimidating to people about thinking that they want to be vegetarian or they want to be vegan or they want to eat healthy. It's intimidating because there are times in your life, either for health reasons or just because you have a craving for something. And that idea that it's all or nothing is just the thing that I think stops people a lot. So for me, I would say I'm primarily vegetarian. But if I'm at someone's house or if all of a sudden even a steak looks delicious, I'll eat it. I'll eat a little bit of it.
Right.
So I mean, the other thing that's really nice about this book is it's not ever about taking anything away from your diet. It's about adding
awesome.
more healthy foods to your diet.
Right.
Well, one thing that we learned that I love this, I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so it makes it easier, but vegetarians are healthier than carnivores. but flexitarians are as healthy as vegetarians. So basically, what the message is that, like Tracy said, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, that you can just modify, add more. And one of the interesting things about it is they're not sure if it's people who don't eat meat are healthier or people who eat more plants are healthier. So just by adding plants, you're going to be a healthier person in so many ways. Physically, cancer, heart, diabetes, weight-wise. So there's so many reasons to make this very easy step to being a flexitarian.
Cool. And one more question about the book, about having a well-stocked pantry and flavors. I mean, your recipes are, each one of them has a lot of umami to it and good flavor boosters. What are some of your favorite ingredients and what do you keep on hand? It's very important. I know from my last book I wrote was vegetarian, and I really felt like I had to tell people how to stock their pantry in order to be prepared to bring the vegetables home and then make it into something that was a meal.
One of my favorite pantry ingredients is smoked paprika. I really love it. It adds such a depth to dishes, can add a little bit of spice, but it just really changes from, and it's so easy to add to things. And I think that we really are very, very concerned with flavor and adding the right amount of spices or chilies or whatever to any of the dishes that we do. But we don't go over the top. They're always
that everybody
flavorful,
will enjoy
but
them.
really delicious.
That's so cool.
And stocking a pantry, I think, is key, especially for impromptu cooking. And if you want to cook mostly plants, one of my favorites is chickpeas, which I love because I feel like you can do so much with them, and they're filled with protein and filled with fiber. I mean, you could put them in salads, you could roast them. We make chickpea croutons, which we have in the book, which are so good.
Chickpea recipes.
But the other thing in terms of pantry, which I think sometimes people don't think about because it's technically not in your pantry, but also in your freezer.
Right.
Freezing vegetables. I mean, if you keep frozen spinach in your freezer or, frozen peas, that's really healthy, and that's a great way. If, let's say, one night you're stuck, what am I going to make? You can make
Right, you've got pasta with greens
add your
and a little
vegetables,
Parmesan
and then you've
cheese,
got
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You've got your mostly plants dinner.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Favorite pantry ingredient?
Well, I mean, I love that you brought up the umami because that is the one thing that happens when you're cooking vegetables. A lot of times people are afraid it's just going to be dull or it's just not going to have that earthy, meaty taste. Really, is what you want. You want that meaty taste. So, I think if you're vegetarian or vegan, dried mushrooms are a great thing to add that earthiness, that umami.
Tons of umami.
And if you eat fish, anchovies or the fish sauce, the Asian fish sauce, really adds a lot of that. Again, that earthiness, and it tastes like you're eating meat, or but you're not.
And those are things you can keep in your pantry without. They don't have to be fresh.
Exactly.
They're dry ingredients. So.
I think for me, again, it's not technically in your pantry, but fresh herbs are such a key, especially when you're cooking vegetables. Some of my favorite recipes in the cookbook are our sides. We have roasted delicata squash with crispy sage, and we have thyme-roasted rainbow carrots. And I think when you just add fresh herbs, we add parsley to a lot, basil, of course, to a lot. It's not only upping the flavor, but again, a lot of fresh herbs are plants, and you're upping your vegetable quantities in your dishes, which is a great side effect.
Yeah, I think parsley has a lot of anthocyanin in it, one of those good green chemicals. So, okay, one more question about the book, and well, two questions. Do you have a favorite chapter? And then I want to find out if you all have individual cooking styles that vary from each other.
I think my favorite chapter is the fish one, because I love fish. And we talk about different techniques, which I love. I love the ones where you make a pouch to cook your fish, which is one of the healthiest ways of cooking it, and adds so much to the flavor. I think one of my all-time favorite in the cookbook is the salmon piccata, which I absolutely adore.
It's a
And
good
I
idea.
sort of have been making it every week. I can't get enough of it.
I love that. When something from the cookbook becomes a part of your repertoire. It's very cool. Yeah.
I would say my favorite is the vegetable mains favorite, and the reason why I like that so much is because you can just pick out one, and that can be your entire meal. Like it's going to have everything in
Right.
there. So there's, like you talked about, the orchiette pasta with shredded Brussels sprouts and parsley pesto. Like if you make that, you don't need anything with it. So
Right.
I really like that idea, especially if you're kind of pressed for time.
Yeah. Meal in one.
So believe it or not, we didn't plan this, but I have a feeling we all have a different favorite.
That's because there are a lot of chapters and they cover
all
every course, including dessert, which is awesome.
I mean, I like all of those chapters as well, but what I really like, it's the DIY section, the do-it-yourself. And it's similar in the first cookbook. We had a similar chapter that is it's easier than you think. And what I like about that is it's all the kind of things that you just immediately grab for in the grocery store.
Right.
You know, your pesto, pickled onions, or just those little things that really kind of highlight a meal. And the thing is that they're so easy and they taste so much better when you make it
And
yourself.
they're better for you. They don't have all
And
the
they're
preservatives.
better for
and the
you, and a
sodium.
lot of it you can freeze. And so I love that kind of, the
fun.
quick making these things that I always thought were so complicated, and being able to make them myself.
Yeah, and then makes your week like cooking so much easier because you've got them in
Exactly.
there. So it's just cool.
I would say the sides section, which I had referred to the delicata squash and the rainbow carrots. There's smashed small baby potatoes with shaved Brussels sprouts. And the reason why I love the sides chapter so much is that sometimes people don't eat vegetables because they think they're boring, they're steamed, they're boiled. But vegetables can take on amazing flavors. We have like broccolini and asparagus that nuts are added and seeds are added, and again, the herbs, cheeses. So I think you can really make vegetables into the star of the show. And we have a lot of those recipes in the side section.
So, your cooking styles, Corky. You grew up in a family that really appreciated good food,
Oh, yeah.
and how did you pass that along to your family?
Well, my mom was an incredible cook.
Right up to your
Okay. Was an incredible cook, and as was her mother also. So I was used to eating really good food growing up. And when I was a kid, I was such a carnivore. I just loved meats. And my mother would have to take the roast off the table. If not, I would gobble it all up. But she had wonderful style, and I'll just wait till.
Yeah.
We'll just wait for the
I think it's the Chilmark Fire Station, probably. Yeah. Okay.
That she would cook a lot of things in French style. And then when I really started cooking, Julia Childs was someone I really looked up to and thought was terrific. And sort of.
Did you watch Julia on TV?
Oh, yes, I watched and had her books. In fact, my copy is so horrible. I'm embarrassed to buy it.
My mother always said she thought that the people at the liquor store thought she was a drunk because she had to go down to get so much wine when she was cooking
Different kinds
Julia
for
Child's
everything.
recipes.
Yes.
Another cup of this. So, yeah.
But my mother also made a lot of Jewish items too. And I'm still trying to make her strudel dough. I've never had luck with that.
Ooh,
so
that's
that's on my
complicated.
list still
Yeah.
to learn how to actually do it. I have a recipe.
Cool.
So Corky influenced, I think it's fair to say, all of us, and our brother too. So we were
Yeah.
so lucky growing up with Corky's cooking. I mean, she was really incredibly creative. And again, like because she was introduced to all these amazing vegetables at an early age. I remember years ago she'd make us artichokes, and all our friends would be like, "What's that? How do you eat that?"
Right.
So I think we always felt very lucky. But I think cooking style is basically, if you can get the really great produce and vegetables and cooking with a lot of plants and beans and legumes and lots of herbs and spices, not too fussy, more simple and healthy, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Yep.
So I really love spice and lots of flavor, and I love
Cool.
going to different countries, and so I love cooking just a lot of ethnic food, Mexican food, Spanish, Peruvian.
So it's your influence in
Indian.
here. There's lots of good.
I mean, we all
Asian
sort
and-
of
yeah.
like to cook that way sometimes, but I would say, even if I'm doing something simple, I like to sort of add flavors from around the world.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of my favorite.
That's fun.
And for me, I think a lot of it is just the feeling of cooking, and this we owe to Corky, and she got it from her mom, is the idea that we cook, we sit down and have a communal meal, everybody eating together, enjoying food. Like, food is something to be enjoyed and savored and talked about. Like, you should see us. At breakfast, we'll talk about lunch and dinner and what's going to be on the
We talked
table.
about food before we came out
Yes.
here, like
Yes.
nonstop.
So I think she expressed that whole idea that food is such a positive and it's a sharing experience, and we've then taken and filtered that to our children as well.
Yes, I understand your kids. Some of your kids are really good cooks. They're starting to cook. Is that? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about coming to the vineyard and how the vineyard influenced. I mean, you guys have been coming here for summers forever, and
In 1961,
Wow.
we started
and you
coming
have good
here.
food memories, I bet.
Oh, yes, yes. One of the things we used to do is we would have lobster races on our deck. And then, of course, the kids
Nobody's
would
done
never eat the lobsters.
Naturally.
So that wasn't the best idea.
Corky. That was not smart.
No, not smart at all. But yeah, or we'd go clamming on Red Beach and get the steamers, and always loved that. And learned how to make clam chowder and paella, which is one of the recipes in the book.
It sounds
Which
so
sounds
good.
very complicated, but it's a wonderful dish if you're entertaining a lot of people. You can do it in bits and pieces, and it's such an impressive when you serve your paella. It's just wonderful.
I'm looking forward to making yours because I know your instructions are going to be clear, and it really is just a question of moving through it.
Yes,
but a lot of times you get a
exactly.
paella recipe where people assume lots of
No,
things. that you
I'd
don't know,
had so many horrible experiences with paella
Yeah.
where the mussels went open and the chicken was undercooked.
Right, and the rice is undercooked.
Yes, and
Yeah.
with this, everything really works out, so I can
Yeah.
recommend it.
Good.
Two memories. One is definitely the clamming and going to Lobsterville. And I mean, there was nothing better than, digging for clams. Our hands would just be black. And then going home and Corky would cook them and just
Yeah.
loving those. I mean, doesn't get fresher than that.
No.
And then sort of as a teenager, what I remember a lot is going to the small farm stands that they have. I mean, there's so many now too. And just sort of seeing what they have, and even now going and sort of letting that dictate what I'm going to make for dinner that night. If there's
Which is
amazing
really fun.
squash or tomatoes.
Yeah.
I have really strong sort of first memories of cooking success, baking for the fair,
Oh,
the
that's so
agricultural
cool.
fair.
Did you win a
And
ribbon?
I won a blue ribbon
Oh,
for at a
did
young
not know
age
this.
for the blueberry muffins, and I had gotten the blueberries from we picked them. I fell into a huge bush of poison ivy, and the next day woke up like head to toe poison ivy
Oh my
all
God.
over. But I got a bushel of blueberries.
Wow.
Yeah, and then made blueberry muffins and won the first place, and that was just
Oh.
so many fond memories of that, but
Yeah.
also of just learning how to cook or bake and the kind of confidence that you get from that as a young kid, it's just unbelievable.
It's
so
very
a lot of
cool.
my memories of the vineyard are sort of learning to cook.
That's very cool, and blue ribbon to boot.
I have a great memory that continues that where our house is out in Aquinnah, there are a lot of beach plums. And Corky has been making beach plum jelly
Oh,
for, I feel like, my whole life. And and it's my favorite jelly in the world. And sometimes there's not that many beach plums. Sometimes there's a lot. And we actually fight. I'd be like, wait, Mom gave you another jar? She didn't give me one. And we still, if I'm here when they're ripe, I just pick as many as I can. And I've made it with her now a few times too, but she's like the queen of beach plum jelly.
all right. So we're gonna show up when it's beef plum jelly time. Go hi. So we're. Yeah, I know. I grew up picking them too, but in Delaware. So, so we're time for questions from people. Does anybody? I have more questions, but I would love to hear from you guys. Anybody have something they want to? Yes, there's a microphone over there. It's a microphone if you want to, or yeah.
Yes, I have a place. I live in Manhattan, but I do have a place in Connecticut where I do have an herb garden, and I love growing herbs. My second favorite thing to grow is garlic and tomatoes. Those are my favorite three things. But garlic is wonderful. You put it in the fall, and in the summer you have a whole new crop. It's amazing.
Those of us who are in apartments, what do you think of those things that they sell in the department stores now, where you can grow your own herbs under special light? Are they good? Are they worth it?
I've never tried them, so I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds. I can't imagine that it's not.
Yeah.
It seems like such a wonderful thing to just in
Yeah.
the city have fresh herbs at your
Yeah.
disposal. Any other questions? Well, I mean, I know it can get annoying when because so this gentleman's question wasn't directed at anyone in particular. That I tend to, and I think we all do, when food, like when I make something or when we're in a restaurant, the first thing I do is I take a picture of it. And a lot of times everyone's standing there with forks. And I'm like, get your forks out of the picture so I can snap a picture of it. But I personally, I think we all do, think that the aesthetic is, it just tastes so much better when it looks pretty too. I mean, it just is, it's fun too. It makes it kind of more artistic to try to place the ingredients in an attractive way.
And also for a cookbook, I mean, you want to have the food look good. So that's key. It's got to look appetizing and you want to eat it.
All right, I have one more question. Is there going to be a third cookbook?
Well, this one just came out in April. And, cookbooks
They
take,
put a lot of
as
pressure.
you know,
Yes.
Susie,
Yeah.
cookbooks take a very long time from start to finish.
They do.
Just the book proposal is almost a year for us
Right.
to really focus
For
and hone
anybody.
in on what we want to do, what the recipes are going to be, what the chapters are going to be. And then once the book is out, then there's publicity and promoting. And so it gives you time to sort of take a breath and see what you want to do next. I'm sure you experienced that too.
Yes. I'm 4 books in and I'm going to be resting for a while. Have a full-time job too.
Well,
so.
I always think of it as, I don't know if, for those of you who have children, writing a cookbook is a little bit like giving birth. And when you first give birth, you think, okay, that's it. I'm never doing that again.
Right. So much work.
And then it's there and you start to love it and then you forget how hard it was. And then you're like, let's do another cookbook. This is such a great idea.
So we're waiting to sort of
Go through that period. That's
Go through
wait till the
the
baby
forgetting
is
again.
toddling, right? Yeah. Well, you guys get along so well. It's impressive that you've done too. So, any cooking show plans?
not right now, but we're very open to cooking shows
Yeah.
and to writing
That-
another book. But like as we
That's
said,
fun.
take a big breather
Yeah.
and then come back. Yeah.
That's very cool. Wow. Anybody else? Yeah.
Growing up in a foodie family, it may not have been necessary, but I always wonder about knife skills and things like that. Did any of you ever take, the King's supermarkets out in Jersey? They always have a knife skills course, which I've never managed to get into. But
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny. In our first cookbook, we stress how we are not chefs, but we're home cooks. So I think we've all gotten better over time, but I don't think we're great, but we're good, and we get the job done. And we don't cut ourselves, so.
sharp knife, yeah. Because I'm not kidding that I literally, I live on a farm. My food is grown in front of my face, and I literally cannot cook because I'm that intimidated by the presentation, and I literally I'll get to the point where it's time to chop something, and I stop dead in my tracks because I think I'm not, maybe it's a type A personality.
It's
Well,
really
you
a
follow
skill.
these guys'
I was
recipes.
going to
you'll
say you
get
can.
good
It's a
results.
skill that anybody can learn. It seems intimidating at first, and like they said, we are not trained chefs, and you can actually watch some YouTube videos which are excellent at teaching you. But I would just like my 22-year-old daughter, when I asked her to mince the shallots, she did it better than me, and it's just from doing it. So just give up, listen to some music, and yeah.
Definitely a sharp knife, as Tracy said, is a good idea because you'll, have better results, and you only hurt yourself really when you have a dull knife. So, yeah. All right. Okay.
If there are herbs that you need that you cannot grow in your garden, where in New York City do you go to buy them?
Oh, most of the supermarkets have whole sections devoted to herbs. They're easy, really, to find. Even the small mom and pop stores in Manhattan have a selection of the main herbs, so you can get those easily.
Do you ever go to Pooh's Pants on 28th Street?
Yeah.
20 whatever.
The Indian market?
Oh, yes, they have an amazing selection of spices and herbs, one of the best, I think, in the city.
Okay, guys. Well, I want to ask one more question, and then we'll thank you. Has becoming a cookbook author changed your life in any way in terms of adding on to? It's like a new identity to what you already were doing in your life. Is it fun or interesting, or has it made a difference? Or
I think for me, it's what it does is it sort of urges me on to try new recipes. I'm always trying new combinations or things. And just, I guess, in a way, thinking of maybe another cookbook that I could use these recipes in. So I think it's had that kind of positive effect on me.
I mean, we've always been close, but I think this brings us even closer because literally we're on the phone every day or texting or emailing. So that's been pretty amazing. And I guess just creating recipes in a book, I mean, it's really a great creative thing to be able to do it. And then hopefully other people will, enjoy what we've put together. So
For me, there's a huge community, a huge world of foodies or cookbook writers, chefs, farmers, and all of a sudden you sort of feel like you're part of this world that is so exciting and doing new things and changing the world in a lot of ways. So I just feel so grateful to be able to be a part of this new community that I was never a part of, and it's very exciting.
And for me, one of the really nice benefits is we've been doing a lot of book talks and, going on the radio and doing podcasts, but we're doing talks like this. And we always come away and we go like, those people were so nice. And we really get to meet a lot of people and just learn about your experiences cooking and what you like. And so I think it just opens our world. Besides the foodie world, it just opens our world to a lot of people who come out to things like this. So thank you guys.
Thank you, guys. This was really fun to talk to you. And they will be, you're going to be signing books, right? So head on over to the book tent and buy a book and get these guys to sign it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.